Hey, Riverside fifth graders, it's Mrs. Wilgenbush. I am so excited that I've been asked to share some readings with you. I'm going to actually be reading chapters in the book Masterminds by Gordan Korman. For those of you that are in this book club, if you can find Masterminds in your on Epic, I will give you just a minute and then we're going to get started. All right, here's how this is going to work. You will be able to follow along while I read. Right now, you see my picture. I'm going to get rid of my picture so that you can see all of the words in the chapter. It should be make it easier on you to see everything. So here we go. Chapter 1. Eli Frieden. It's 1 in a million shot, and we nail it. Just not in the way we planned. I lie against the cool stone of the pool deck and peer into the filter opening. I can make out the tip of the boomerang, but I can't quite jam my hand in deep enough to get a grip on it. It's stuck! What are the odds? Randy groans. You could throw that thing 50,000 times and never get anywhere near that filter, but one little challenge and bullseye. Randy's famous around Serenity for his challenges, which usually involve catching something uncatchable while riding a bicycle, jumping on a pogo stick, swinging on a rope, or rolling inside a truck tire. As his best friend, I'm usually the guinea pig for Randy's cockamamie ideas. Like today's challenge, Randy throws the boomerang out of the window of the treehouse, and I'm supposed to leap off the diving board, snatch it out of midair, and do a cannonball into the pool. Only I miss. The cannonball turns into more of a belly flop, and the boomerang disappears inside the filter. Maybe Mr. Amani can get it out, I suggest. He's the local handyman whose job includes pool maintenance and just about everything else from plumbing and electrical work to ridding your crawl space of scorpions and baby armadillos. And maybe he can't, which means my folks will have to call the pool guys. That's a much bigger deal than it sounds like. There's no pool company in Serenity, and the nearest town is 80 miles away. It can take weeks to get anybody to schedule a trip out here. And in the meantime, your pool turns to soup. Mr. and Mrs. Hardaway aren't going to be thrilled with this, although they're pretty used to it, having dealt with Randy for 13 years. It's definitely a drawback living in a small town in the middle of nowhere. Every time something like this comes up, though, my dad just points to the newspaper clipping on our fridge. Serenity voted #1 in the USA for standard of living. He leads me through the bullet points in the article. No crime, no unemployment, no poverty, and no homelessness. The amazing part isn't so much that we have none of those things, but other towns do, and they're okay with it. It must be awful. Of course, there are only 185 people in Serenity, so it's not so hard to make sure all of them have some place to live and to work. We've got Serenity Plastic Works, one of the largest producers of orange traffic cones in the United States. Our school has the highest test scores in New Mexico. We're right on the edge of Carson National Forest, surrounded by canyons, foothills, and woods, and the sun shines practically every day. True, it gets pretty hot sometimes, but we don't bake like they do in those real desert towns. No wonder Dad's so proud. He's the mayor, which sounds like a big deal, but it really isn't. His salary as a mayor is $1 per year, and he always claims he's overpaid. Our parents constantly remind us how lucky we are, and we always roll our eyes. But you know what? They're right. We are lucky. Not just when the pool filter is busted and the nearest repair town is Teos. Randy makes an executive decision. I'm not going to tell my folks about it. I'll just act 10 times as amazed as everybody else when they find the boomerang in there. I'm a little uncomfortable. That feels like lying. I know people do it all the time on TV and in books. But here, we're honest no matter what. Even when it's hard to be, or when it could get you into trouble. That might sound like a little too good to be true, but I think that's why people here are so happy. We could go to my pool, I suggest, anxious to change the subject. No boomerang, though. My dad is 20 times as strict as the Hardaways. He's the school principal as well as the mayor. That is his big job. There's only one school in town. Nah, I'm sick of swimming. We could hang out in the treehouse. Boring, he declares. Every kid in town has a treehouse, and none of them are any fun. And don't say video games either. It doesn't matter how good your home theater is when all the games are lame. Our games aren't so lame, I remind him. Randy and I have figured out a way to tweak the game software to unlock hidden features, like crashing cars and fighting with real weapons. Turns out I've got a knack for that kind of thing. I can do it with my iPad and computers too. It's strictly hush hush because everybody in Serenity is anti violence. I am too, but in a video game. I figure, what the harm? What's the harm in it? It's not like it's actually happening. Yawn. Randy gets this way sometimes when nothing satisfies him. Basically, he's a crab. Believe it or not, it's the one main reasons I like him. You don't hear much complaining in Serenity. Randy always manages to find something, though. It's almost like he's daring the universe to do a better job, no matter how great things already are. I think my dad would be happier if I found a different best friend. But let's face it, in a town with only 30 kids, there's not much to choose from. And anyway, you don't find best friends. Best friends just happen. So what are we going to do? I ask him. Let's get out of here. Let's go somewhere. I brighten. Hey, they've built a new high slide at the park. He's unimpressed. Big deal. You climb up so you can come down. Let's do something cool. Like what? Like, his eyes dance. Check out the most awesome old sports car you've ever seen. Sports car, I echo. When you live in a place this small, not only do you know every car, you could probably recite the license plate numbers by heart. When somebody gets a new vehicle, 3/4 of the town show up to see it. There are plenty of fancy SUVs and sedans, but no sports cars. It's the weirdest thing. My dad and I were hiking a few miles out of town, and we found an old abandoned ranch, busted up fences, and a house that has nothing but a pile of toothpicks. That was nothing but a pile of toothpicks. The only thing standing was this rusted quonset hut. Quonset. Sorry about that. Quonset hut. And when we went inside, the car was there. The tires were flat, and the whole thing was buried in dust and spider webs. But it was beautiful. My dad said it was Italian, an Alfa Romeo. It had Colorado license plates from 1961. Wow, I say. Yeah, he enthuses. Let's go see it. What? Right now? Randy shrugs. Well, what are you waiting for? Christmas? It's not too far. Grab your bike and let's go. I hesitate. I have to ask my dad. He looks pained. Bad idea. I know your old man. Poor dad. Felix Frieden is kind of a joke among the kids in town, with his three-piece suits and his shine shoes and his no-nonsense attitude. They just see his principal side. Randy has a point, though. You think he'll say no? Well, why give him the chance, Randy insists. The car's only a few miles away. We'll be there and back before he even knows we're gone. Come on, Eli, live a little. It's just, I'm embarrassed to say it, but I have to be honest. I've never been out of town. Well, neither have I. Not since we visited my grandma when I was 6. No, I interrupt. I've never been anywhere out of town. Not even where your dad took you hiking. Well, what about the time in science when our class went to fossil hunting? He challenges. That was still inside the town limits. Mrs. Lasko said so. He's amazed. But you haven't ever passed that stupid sign, the one that says, now leaving Serenity, America's ideal community? I shake my head. I've never even seen it. Well, you're going to see it today, he decides. Grab your bike. That's another thing about Randy. He won't take no for an answer. He doesn't exactly bring out the best in me, but we have a great time together, and that counts for a lot. He does the things I daydream about, but don't have the guts to try. Until today. Only one road passes through Serenity, a two-lane paved ribbon everybody calls Old County 6. We pedal west along it, riding right down the center over the faded, broken line. There's little fear of meeting traffic in either direction. All decent highways cross New Mexico, well to the south. If you hit Serenity, chances are you're lost. As we bike on, I spot the gully that was the site of the fossil hunting trip. I am now farther from home than I have ever been in my life. Can it really be this easy? You just jump on a bicycle and ride out of town? It seems like cheating somehow, breaking some overarching law of the way things are supposed to be. Yet, here I am, just doing it. It's kind of exhilarating. At least I've never been so aware of the beating of my heart and the blood pumping through my veins. I feel a little strange about not telling Dad. Not that I need his permission. I am 13 years old. Besides, he never specifically said not to ride my bike out past the town limits. I'm not breaking any rules, but I know he'll be disappointed if he finds out about it. Face it, if I don't need to ask permission for this ride, how come I snuck my bike out of the garage? I try to push through the thought from my head as I pedal away. I glance over my shoulder at Serenity, the perfect rows of immaculate white homes, the swimming pools positioned in the lots of aquarium postage stamps, like aquarium postage stamps. The basketball hoops lined up like sentries, all lovingly set down, and the striking southwest landscape. In this view, I find my answer to the nagging question of how a person can spend 13 years here without ever once setting foot outside the town proper. Why would I need to? When it comes to fun or comfort, we've got it all. We've got the stuff adults want. We've got stuff adults want too: a great school and great jobs. We've got the three essential qualities of Serenity citizens: honesty, harmony, and contentment. We've heard about the bigger towns, and even worse, cities. They stink of garbage and everything's crumbling, and crime is so bad that nobody can trust anybody else. People spend their time in fear, hunkered down behind locked doors and alarm systems. At the same time, it's almost startling how tiny the town is, even from this distance of barely a mile. If it wasn't for the factory, you wouldn't notice it unless you knew what to look for. I guess that's serenity miracle our parents are always talking about, that so much quality of life can be held in such a small package. How much further? I call ahead to Randy. Probably another 20 minutes. After a bend in the road, a tall butte obscures the town altogether. It completes the feeling of being out there. Randy doesn't seem to notice at all. Look, he shouts back at me, waving his arm to the right. It's the sign Randy mentioned, the one about leaving town. In contrast to the spotless and impeccable Serenity, it's surprisingly faded and weather-beaten. I squint at the bottom, where the warning, no gas next 78 miles, has been tacked on. I've done it. I've left town. I survey the rocky hills and scrub the pines and brush. I don't know what to call this, but it's not Serenity anymore. In more than 13 years, I'm officially somewhere else. And how does it make me feel? To be honest, kind of scared. I've never done this before. Never lost visual contact of my hometown. By the time I get to see this Alfa Romeo, I'll be so stressed out that I won't even be able to appreciate it. I'm overthinking this whole business to the point where it's making me sick to my stomach. Well, I'm not turning back. I made it this far, and Randy will never let me hear the end of it if I don't follow through. But I really am sick and getting sicker. The nausea grows stronger, rising up in the back of my throat. There's no way it's just from being nervous. This is something physical. What did I have for lunch today? I can't remember. But whatever it was, it's coming up, and soon. My stomach twists in paralyzing cramp, and my head hurts too. What's with you, Eli? Randy calls back in annoyance. Running out of gas already? His expression changes when he sees me. Hey, are you okay? I've slowed down, although I hardly notice. Only pure stubbornness keeps my legs pumping. I'm in agony, blinded by the kind of headache that lodges behind the eyes like a glowing coal, pulsating and doubling in intensity. The pain is unimaginable. It's not just a terrible thing, it's the only thing. I'm not even aware of toppling off the bike until my chin strikes the road. Fire erupts on my forearms where there scrapes the rough pavement. I see Randy kneeling over me, feel him shaking me, but I'm powerless to respond. I can only focus on one thought. I'm dying. What happens next is so shocking, so bizarre that I'm sure I'm imagining. Delirious with pain, a loud rhythmic roar swells around Randy and me, and strong winds whip down on us. A dark shadow moves directly overhead, growing larger and larger as it descends. An enormous military-style helicopter settles on the road as its rotors buffeting us with air. The hatch opens, and out jump 6 men in identical indigo uniforms and wine-colored berets. Purple people eaters, Randy breathes. Through the fog, I can hardly make out the distinctive tunics of the surety, the security force of Serenity Plastics. The security force of the Serenity Plastics works that doubles as the town police. It takes all the strength I have to lift my arm to the rescuers. Help me, I whisper, wondering if they can even hear me over the thunder of the chopper. Eli! I can't seem to pinpoint the source of the voice. Through blurry vision, I can just make out the outline of a face peering down from above. Eli, wake up! Dad? I've never been so relieved to see him. My father's familiar features come into focus. Thin lips and pale eyes, the color like a frozen lake. It's his principal stare, although it's hard to imagine him looking any different if it was an astronaut or a fruit picker or a rock star. Most kids go to a long way to avoid that expression, but to me, it's familiar and even comforting. My earliest memory. I'm in one of the two beds in Serenity's tiny doctor's office and health clinic. An IV tube tugs at my arm, and that means it's all true. It comes back like a delayed recollection of a terrible nightmare. The bikes, the collapse, the purple people eaters. I never thought I'd see you again, Dad. The lump in my throat swells to cantaloupe size. I never thought I'd see anybody. The stare softens, and he leans over and hugs me. You gave us quite a scare. What happened? I feel better, but by no means back to normal. An impenetrable grogginess covers me like a curtain. The nausea and headache are gone, but the memory of so much pain and fear haunt me. The idea that it's possible to feel so awful and that maybe I'll feel that way one day again, it's changed me. On the other hand, I'm alive, which is kind of a surprise. What happened? I repeat. Dad breaks the hug. He tries, but he's not just a touchy-feely guy. Dr. Bruder isn't quite sure. Dehydration, maybe? Well, I was fine until suddenly I wasn't anymore. I was on my knees throwing up nothing and holding onto my head to keep it from falling off. My voice cracks a little. I honestly believed I was going to die. But we can't rule out the possibility of an extreme allergic reaction to something growing out there, Dad goes on briskly. I stare at him, wanting to be baby just for a few more minutes longer. Briefly, I wondered if my mom would have been the warm and fuzzy parent. She died when I was little, so I'll never know. I don't even remember the smiling face in her portrait on the mantel. It's my job to replace the flowers every week. The picture is familiar, but the person in it is a stranger. Don't get me wrong, my father has always been there for me. I spit up on his tailored suits as a baby. When I toddled my first few steps, his sure hands steadied me. I even remember him in the pool supporting my stomach when I was learning to swim. No small thing for a guy who rarely loosens his tie. But a teddy bear, he's not. Is Randy all right? Did the purple people eaters pick him up too? The pale eyes frost over in disapproval. We don't use that term. I bite my tongue. Well, maybe you don't, but that's what every kid in town calls them. What do you expect when they dress up like a platoon in plume? You're lucky the Serenity stumbled on you when they did, he continues. Stumbled? It isn't exactly how I described it. Is that what you'd call a giant helicopter filled with the purple stormtroopers descending from the sky in a blizzard of flying dust? When my father frowns, his lip retreat into a pencil-thin line above his chin. Stormtroopers? Where would you pick up a word like that? From school, I reply. I'm in the 8th grade, Dad. We know about armies. We even know they have to fight wars sometimes. He sighs. I suppose. We're citizens of a larger world too, not just of our own town. I wish that everybody could share the life that we have here. Tell me about it, I agree. Hey, Dad, why did the surety have their own helicopter? It belongs to the factory. We're fortunate to have a company like the Plastic Works that looks after us so well. A lot of communities our size don't enjoy our resources. Yeah, I persist, but why do they need it here? We're completely safe. He looks surprised. Well, they just saved your bacon, didn't they? In a big city, that helicopter might have been needed for police surveillance. Here, we have the luxury to use it to help people. It's just another thing that makes Serenity such a special place. Don't you agree? But for once, I'm not sure whether I agree or not. Because the memory of the chopper triggers other images. Rough hands telling me about the craft. A stifled hey from Randy hitting the deck beside me. The sound of the bikes being crammed into the cargo hold. A dizzying takeoff, which finally brings up my lunch. Serenity viewed from high above, growing steadily larger as we come in for a landing. Then, pounding feet, a babble of ancient voices, purple people eaters, Dr. Bruder, my father, all talking at once. Here, hold the stretcher already. Quickly, put him on it. The needle pierces my arm and I'm fading, but I can hear a response. Yes, Mr. Hammerstrom. Hammerstrom? At that point, the sedative takes effect and everything goes black. Dad kisses my forehead. This doesn't happen very often, proving how much this incident may have shaken him. Now get some rest, Eli. Dr. Bruder wants to observe you for a couple days. I know I should be grateful to be alive, but the curiosity is boiling inside me and I can't help it. What's Hammerstrom? He's almost gone, but the question freezes him in the doorway. I beg your pardon? When they took me out of the helicopter, someone mentioned Hammerstrom. One of the surety goes by that name, Dad replies. I try not to smile. Wow, there's a purple people eater named Hammerstrom? I've got to tell Randy. Although everybody knows everybody in Serenity, that doesn't extend to the surety. They keep to themselves, which makes them kind of a nameless and faceless. You see them around town, but the only time you ever get close is on Serenity Day for the annual Surety versus Plastic Works tug of war. That's also when they do their drill team parade, which looks like someone spilled grape juice on the Grenadier Guards in front of Buckingham Palace. Now put it out of your mind, my father continues. You're safe and it's all over. It's meant to be soothing, but it sounds an awful lot like an order. I resist a wild impulse to snap to a salute. And that's where we're going to stop for today. We just finished chapter 1. So what's going to happen is I'm going to continue reading chapters to you, and your classroom teachers will have you listen to the chapters and then do some activities with you. It was great working and seeing you guys today, and I'll be back for another one soon.